everyone, I'm Carlota Pico from the CONTENTMIX, and I'm excited to be here today with Linda Ghabain, who is Nilfisk's Global Social Media Manager and has over 11 years of experience in marketing and communications. Linda, thank you so much for joining us on the CONTENTMIX, and welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Linda, to start the interview off, I'd like to learn a little bit about your background, your experience, and how you got into your current role.
Sure. So my name is Linda Ghabain. I'm the social media manager for Nilfisk Group. We're based here in Copenhagen, Denmark. I've been studying marketing and communications maybe it was like 12 years ago when I decided to join social media, and over the years it became a career. So I've been doing social media for major brands like DFDS, Helly Hansen, and Flying Tiger Copenhagen across multiple countries. And now I'm back in Denmark.
Wonderful. Could you tell me a little bit about your company and some of the sector nuances that goes along with your current job?
Sure. So I'm responsible for the social media strategy and the rollout of that strategy globally across the group. We are primarily a B2B company. We're in the cleaning industry, so professional cleaning industry, helping businesses across different industries from, agriculture to hospitality, tourism, even pharma and other various industries. And my role here is to set up the strategy on social media, but also to educate and inform internally our stakeholders on how social media should be done and which channels we should or shouldn't be on and how to maintain those channels. So you could say that it's a role that covers both strategy and operational tasks. So it could also be community management for some marketing, for some markets, but it's primarily an educational role and more of a strategic position that I have right now.
Okay. What does one have to keep in mind when communicating to their local audiences about the professional cleaning industry?
Well, it really depends on the audience and the goal of the post. So internally, we have a team that I try to inform every day that it's a good idea to always keep in mind why are you posting what you're posting, and always keep in mind the end target audience. So who are you trying to reach with that post? And then take it from there, work on the copy, work on the visuals, work on the links, and maybe landing pages or whatever you want to inform on. So I think that would depend. It's a very case-by-case basis.
Okay, but are there any special regulations or policies, for example, that go hand in hand with the cleaning technology, professional cleaning industry?
Not necessarily. I mean, apart from the main GDPR rules that we're all aware of, and copyright rules, and the typical rules you would have in social media when doing social media for a global company, I think that the same apply for the cleaning industry as well.
Okay. To give our audience a little bit of background information about Nilfisk, could you tell me about how many channels you're currently present on and in how many languages you're communicating to your audiences in?
Sure. So I started here last summer. We've had over 300 channels across, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, both B2B and B2C channels, so also Instagram. But right now, our primary goal is to simplify and digitize this social media presence. So in the future, we are aiming to have one global channel per each social media channel. That doesn't mean that we won't be able to target locally still, because we will, target the content towards the local market, but we would benefit from a global channel perspective. And in the case of Facebook, for instance, it's best if you use a global Facebook structure for a company this size.
Okay, could you give me some more information about why you think it's best to keep it global for a company of that size, especially on Facebook?
Sure. I mean, it goes back into the resources that the company has internally. So in some cases, it might be best if you have an internal team to handle all the languages from headquarters. In other cases, you might find those resources in the markets. So it really, what works for Nilfisk might not work for another company. But I started here last year by doing an audit on all the social media channels we are on, and also to kind of figure out what are the resources and what are the digital capabilities we have, not only in Denmark, but also in the other 50 plus markets we're in.
Right. So it's more about time management and also about the internal resources that you have when it comes to deciding on how many channels your brand is able to be present on and to communicate on.
Exactly. And we need to keep in mind both in terms of, the setting up a channel is not just a quick fix. If someone decides to do that, they should take into account both community management, social customer care, reporting on analytics, and all those, performance metrics. And I think that's a big part of, having a company this size on social media, because it's very different from doing social media as a private individual or even for a startup or a smaller agency.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The economic consequences of the coronavirus pandemic are far reaching, and advertising and marketing budgets were amongst the first things to go really within a business. And people were also cutting back on influencers and different marketing initiatives. For that reason, I'd like to ask you about the major lessons that you've learned about marketing during this time, and what do you think the future of marketing will look like post COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think no one knows for sure what the future of marketing looks like after this pandemic. But I think one of the main lessons that I've learned are primarily to be more agile on marketing. Social media in general needs to be more agile. So whenever we go live with a campaign, these past 6 to 8 weeks have really shown me that we can work faster and we can work better. And I think in a nutshell, it might apply to the saying that, done is better than perfect. And as long as we test and learn, I think we're going to be fine. At the same time, I'm a bit disappointed that, I've seen a lot of companies reducing their paid media budgets. And I'm not quite sure that's the right tactic if I look at it long term. Because I think if you have the budget to invest in it now, I think you will end up winning in the long term. Obviously, you need to look into your resources and see if you can afford to do both branding campaigns and shorter lead gen campaigns at the same time. But in general, in the B2B space, it's a lot of, campaigns that see the light of day for 6 months, and then that's done. Then we move on to the next campaign and next campaign. So we don't really have that many branding campaigns as you would have in the B2C space.
Right. Spinning off of that response, I do want to talk about some of the tactics that you're using right now to attract the right type of attention to your brand, because there's a lot of noise out there when it comes to social media networks and brands trying to engage with their audiences. What are some of the strategies that you're currently implementing across your channels?
Well, again, it depends on the market. So I could give you a good example. Lately, we've been looking into setting up Facebook Live sessions. We are testing that out in the US market. Actually, today it's the first live session that we're going to host. It's one of it's part of a series of Facebook Live sessions. And then if we see that works, we will replicate it to the other markets.
Okay. What is
I've seen an increase in, video content. We've seen that both coming from brands and coming from the social media giants. We've seen Facebook investing in Giphy, LinkedIn focusing more on video events and video calls. So I think that's the natural next step for us to focus on as well. Whether that's a webinar or a live session or an interview, that's up to us to decide depending on the campaigns we have. But I think video going forward is definitely here to stay.
Okay. What do you think about TikTok then, spinning off of that question, especially for a B2B type of company?
Yeah, well, I think TikTok is having its moments for sure. And I've tested it already, and I think it's fun and it's great for the younger generation. So it's probably where Snapchat started. But for B2B, I don't really see us starting a TikTok account anytime soon. Also because our audience simply might not be there yet. It's not to say that we won't have it ever, but probably not right now. It's not a priority.
Okay. So then what do you think is missing in the world of social media networks?
That's a good question.
Especially for a business to business type of company. Let's limit it
Yeah.
to B2B.
Well, obviously the primary channels for a B2B company is LinkedIn and Facebook. So, and YouTube, of course, for the search functionalities. But I would like to see a lot more of the functionalities that I see on Facebook. I would like to see them on LinkedIn as well. I've seen recently that LinkedIn has rolled out stories, which are the equivalent of the Instagram stories or the way Snapchat works. And I'm not quite sure if that's the right way to go, simply because, fundamentals are not there yet for LinkedIn. Before we can focus on what this means to us is that, we need to create more content that would cater to a LinkedIn story format now. And before we go in that space, I think we really need to hone in on the quality of the content we feed LinkedIn in the news feed first.
Okay.
Also because LinkedIn, in terms of organic reach, are, I would say, where Facebook were in 2012, before you had to pay for every reach.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a huge potential on LinkedIn that we need to focus on before we move on to newer channels like, TikTok and.
Okay, Linda, I am going to pick your brain a little bit more about this last response. So
Okay.
what's missing on LinkedIn then? What Facebook functions would you add to LinkedIn if you had the opportunity right now to speak to its founders or to speak to its management team?
Yeah, that's a funny question because I actually had a few weeks ago, one of the LinkedIn employees, they shared a question asking if they should roll out LinkedIn stories or not before they actually rolled it out. Mm-hmm. So I had the same kind of answer. First of all, I think we need to have a better overview of the analytics in LinkedIn. I think that's a big part that's missing there. Like we have very limited overview of our audience within LinkedIn compared to Facebook, where you can see really anything from interests to age groups to location to anything. So I think it's not to say that they're not working on it. It's just that probably they're not prioritizing that right now.
Right. Okay, so your main feedback would be to add more analytics so that you can use those analytics to later on zoom into more niche audiences.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. As a social media expert, I would expect you to want more analytics across your social media channels.
I'm a big fan of that.
We all are. We live in the world of data, right? So data right now is our number one, well, at least for me, data is of utmost importance as well. Now, we are moving into the end of the interview, but before we finish up, I do want to put some of the theory that's available online into practical examples. And for that reason, I'd like to ask you about a social media initiative that you're particularly proud of, its results, and how you made that happen.
Is that linked to the last 6 weeks or just in general, or
whatever you want? This is your opportunity to talk about some of the results and highlight some of those initiatives.
Well, I think it's a bit too early to evaluate on the initiatives we've started since February. But I think internally, in terms of our team being quite agile and really working extra in these these days where everyone's working from home, I think people working in digital are actually working even more. I think that's one of the things that maybe I can't really quantify it in numbers, but I can really see the value of that, and I can see that this is something we really need to focus on going forward, and bring that even more into focus in our both in our campaign production, and even start from the ideation phase to the actual content production for every campaign that we have.
Right.
So we have had a Corona campaign that was started in March. We didn't really know where we wanted to go with it in the beginning, but I think it was received quite well. And I'm looking forward to evaluating it at the end of this period. Well, we don't really know when that is, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in the last section of our interview, I am going to be asking you about a set of recommendations that you would offer to our audience. This would be our rapid fire set of questions. The first one being a lesser known app or tool that you can't live without or that you can't work without. It would be awesome if you could zoom into a social media tool, for example, because you are a social media expert. But if you want to talk about something that you can't live without, that's definitely okay also.
All right. So as a social media manager, I do have a ton of apps on my phone, so it's pretty hard to pick one. But I will go with the social media management tool that we use every day. It's called Falcon. So it allows us to both publish, schedule content, engage with our customers, and report on our content performance. And it's a social media management tool that I've been using for the past 6 years, maybe. I've used other tools as well, but I think for a social media manager, that would be the primary app you would always check first thing in the morning.
Okay. What makes it stand out compared to other management apps?
Well, I think it's mostly their customer service, that it's available 24/7 and it's across the globe. I think that's why it's usually preferred to other smaller social media management tools. But again, it depends on the size of the company. So if it's a big enterprise, then obviously this would be preferred, whereas a smaller agency might not find it useful for, if you only have 2 or 3 social media channels and you're only located in, let's say, 3-4 markets.
Right. Your response is definitely in line with your expertise as well, because customer service is such a big topic and such a big excuse me. I'm finding it hard to find the right word to describe how important customer service is, because there is no word to describe its importance across different social networks and also across one's website and also in apps itself. I feel like everybody always brings it back to customer service, to how supported they feel by the brand and by its team. So thank you definitely for bringing that up. What about a marketing influencer in Europe that you follow?
Oh, I follow a lot of both influencers and brands that I think are doing pretty good on social media. I follow a lot of news outlets, so it's hard to pick one again. It depends on what it is I want more information on. Nowadays, of course, I check the WHO's both social media channels and their website quite often for updated news on the corona pandemic. But I think it really depends on which industry you're working in, and it's also quite helpful to get inspired from other industries, even though you might not work in the same industry. It might give you ideas of content production or for any new campaigns you might be having in the pipeline.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely follow different influencers as a source of inspiration more than anything else, as well as information. But more than anything, I follow them to be inspired because they're individuals that I admire, either for their work or for their lifestyle.
Yeah.
Great. And usually I would ask about a European industry group, association, or event that you particularly like. But in this case, I'd like to ask you about a hashtag because you are a social media expert. So what hashtag would you recommend that our audience also follows?
Well, nowadays the hashtag would be COVID-19, unfortunately. I guess that's the hashtag everyone is checking in the industry, and both in the industry and outside of the industry. But I think in terms of events, I would probably choose the Web Summit as the go-to European event, which hopefully will still happen online this year. I'm not sure.
I actually went to the Web Summit last year, and it was fantastic. I'm a big fan of the Web Summit as well. I'm also a really big fan of Lisbon, to be honest. I think it's a fantastic city. So it's like a 2-for-1. I get to visit the city, and at the same time, I get to attend this fantastic event and network my way through several different industry leaders, and also meet people that really inspire me with their everyday work and learn about how they get things done and adapt to different situations, because I think one of the biggest challenges when it comes to marketing is not only having to adapt to COVID-19, but having to adapt to everyday situations, because we do live in such an agile world and our consumers are so demanding. So we constantly have to adapt to what they want and how they expect us to engage with them, which is a challenge, hey?
That's right. Yeah, it is a challenge. That's true.
Wonderful. Well, Linda, thank you so much for joining us on the CONTENTMIX.com. It was a pleasure to talk with you and to learn about your experience at Nilfisk and across your career. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And for everybody listening in, thank you so much for joining us today. For more perspectives on the content and marketing industry in Europe, please check out the CONTENTMIX.com. We'll be publishing interviews just like this one every week. So tune in and see you next time. Bye.